Superman sees the best in movies, but here on Superhero Ethics, we see the truth. It is myself, Matthew, and Jessica Plummer, returning guest, comic book knowledge extraordinaire, published author of short story, soon to be published author of many more cool things, which we'll be discussing during this podcast, but mostly a huge super fan of all things super. And we are, of course, here to talk about Supergirl 2026. Because one part of the internet will tell you that this movie is terrible, terrible, terrible because it is woke and feminist garbage, blah, 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 blah. And another part of the internet will tell you, one that I have much more justification for, to be clear, but still, that this is the best movie ever, and if you don't like it, it's because you're misogynistic and terrible. Actually, there's some room for nuance. And so we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about what we loved, what maybe didn't work so well, why we think choices were made, and the ethical choices that were made both within the movie and outside of it. So, Jessica, say hello and give us a little bit about your background with this character, Supergirl.
Hi. Yeah, Supergirl is actually my favorite superhero. I literally wrote my undergraduate thesis about her. I love her. I've been a fan. I mean, showing my age here, but when I wrote that thesis, that was over 20 years ago now.
Okay.
Had to do math for a bit. And I was apprehensive about this movie, but also excited. And I have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, that sounds accurate. And just kind of placing this in time then, you're pretty close to my age. And so am I right that you were too old for Supergirl in like the Teen Titans era?
Actually,
was she in Teen Titans?
Which, like, the comics, the
many animated shows that a lot of kids.
She was not. No, she wasn't in the cartoon. No.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I'll strike that part out. Well, and that's so great to hear. And I think one of the things that has been an interesting part of this conversation that's happening about the movie is that right now we have a couple of very different images of Supergirl. I think for many people, obviously, if you're comic book readers, you'll know her from the comics. I think she is a character who appears in the Justice League and the Superman animated shows from the late 80s and early 90s, mid 90s. And certainly has shown up in some movies. I think for a lot of folks, I would say probably the primary way a lot of people know her is through the CW show that was running for many seasons that I think a lot of us, myself included, had a lot of really positive things to say about. And so, gets into some problems like a lot of parts of the universe, but is generally probably a lot better than it's remembered. Tell us, though, about your understanding of who is the character of Kara.
So she's an interesting character because unlike Superman, she doesn't have that continuity across the entirety of her existence. Like, Kara did not exist in the comics, or Kara as the TV show decided to pronounce it, and the movie follows suit, which I've been pronouncing it Kara for so much longer. Yeah. She did not exist between 1987 and 2003. I believe that she wasn't allowed to, because there weren't allowed to be other Kryptonians. There was a different version of Supergirl in the middle there. I'm not going to get into it. It's very lengthy and complicated. And so she doesn't have sort of one version of her. The original version of Supergirl, who first appeared in 1959, is very much in line with how we perceive Superman. She's, very wholesome and optimistic, truth, justice, and the American way, kind of a goody two-shoes, very sweet and perky. And I really do love that version very much. Like, that's the version that I imprinted on, even though, again, she didn't exist by the time I was old enough to read. That's very much the version of the character that we see in the CW show. They were really drawing from that well, and I think they did a phenomenal job of it. And then in the early to mid 2000s, when they brought the character back, they really steered into this like edgy, angry, bad girl to sort of contrast her with Superman, which I wouldn't exactly say this movie is doing, but it has a little bit of that DNA.
Yeah. It's certainly not her as
a lot of thoughts about that. No. and I have a lot of thoughts about how the movie presented her as a character and how
Right.
I appreciated it so much more than this 2000s take on her, which was really like the reason she was a bad girl was because it was sexy. And maybe
Yeah.
she'd have sex with you, 45-year-old guy reading this comic, even though she's
Yeah.
only 16. Here's a drawing of her thong. Like it was
Right.
very, you
Yeah.
get it.
And
Um,
I referenced some of the awful parts of the internet that have been talking about this movie and being very critical of it. That has certainly been a big part of it. The, oh my God, she has shorts on. And frankly, while I've
the
never been,
shorts. This
well,
is this is
go
not the
ahead.
first time there has been shorts controversy. There
Oh, I'm
was
sure.
a point in like 2008
Mhm.
where the artist who was drawing the Supergirl book, uh, Jamal Igle, who drew a wonderful Supergirl, he did a
Yeah.
fantastic job. He made it clear that she had like little, cheerleader or tennis shorts on under her skirt. The internet lost its mind. How could you ruin Supergirl? I need to be able to see this underage girl's panties or I'll
Oh my
die.
God.
Like,
Yeah. And to me, like the number of levels of ridiculousness of this, because I'm not even of the mindset of let the pretty girl beat me up and she becomes even prettier, but even I can recognize like Millie Alcock, utterly beautiful, and when she's kicking people in those boots and that skirt and those shorts, I don't care the shorts are there, it's still hot AF. So like, people are dumb, but I wanted to use that to frame the kind of the first question, which is especially for you as someone who writes about the stuff professionally and has done this in a lot of different venues, what is it like in this particular environment where we do have this group of incel idiot right-wing culture warriors who are just going to hate on anything that is at all seeming woke? And Milliat Cock is pretty proudly woke. I mean, she's talked about that she could see this character as being bisexual. This character's sexuality is not in any way a part of this movie, to be clear, but she said other things like that, and people have just gone utterly, completely reasonable things. Malia Cox also a feminist. I think she's non-binary. I think she may actually go by they. I'm not sure there, but I know that has been connected to not being non-binary, and so there's that part of the internet that's just lost its mind. And then I think a much more reasonable, but still a little bit makes conversation harder. As I said, there is a portion of the internet that is now incredibly defensive of her and this movie, again, for a very reasonable understanding, but has now started in the, if you are criticizing this at all, you're a right wing chud, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm kind of curious for you, as someone who is just in these various worlds, what is it like trying to talk about this movie with all that noise happening?
I mean, it's incredibly frustrating. And it's the same thing that we've seen every single time there is a movie in the action and or geek space that
Mm-hmm.
is not about I was going to say straight white man, but we haven't had one of these movies about a queer white man. So let's
Right,
just say, right, like about a white man. You
right,
see this just the same, if not worse, when it's male characters of color and female
right,
characters of color. Forget it. Like the way that people lose their minds, and what what makes me particularly frustrated is that it's not the chuds themselves, even though they are very noisy. Like you can ignore them. You don't have to
right.
be in the space with the chuds, right? It is the way that their perspective on things is sort of validated. Like I can't think of a specific example of this, which makes this a bad anecdote, but I feel like we've all seen those like side by side comparisons of such and such movie but
Mm-hmm.
starring white dudes uh, does great at the box office, and the movie
Right,
costs $100 million to make and it made 150 million. Such and such movie about people of color or women disappoints at the box office,
right,
and it costs $100 million to make and it made 150 million. Like it's not just the chuds. There is
right,
this absurd expectation from Hollywood that if it is not the most successful movie ever made, it's an abject failure. And even if it is one of the most successful movies ever made, that will not be replicated. Look at Black Panther. Like I know we
yeah,
had a sequel. I know Chadwick Boseman passed. Like there are other factors, but like
mm-hmm.
Marvel didn't double down on that and put out more, like lots more movies with characters of color, right?
Right,
Wonder Woman was considered the best movie of the DCEU by basically everyone. We didn't like
right,
the second one was terrible, but we didn't get all these female led films that we should have had. Like even when these movies are successful, Hollywood refuses to
Right.
continue to produce them and frames it as if it's somehow a failure.
And it's a double bind, because not only does Hollywood refuse that, but I think that I I'm going to lay down a gauntlet here, and I'm not blaming this person specifically, but I think that one of the things that has most encouraged the most terrible fans in particular comic book movie fandom, but also in Star Wars and most geek things, was the release of the Snyder Cut. Because
Oh yeah.
so much of that, and again, I have my problem with Zack Snyder. I don't think he's not a right wing incel. He's not one of these people. But the people who got on board with that were very much that. And the sense of like, and every time I bring up, like, why are you still yelling about The Last Jedi? This was 10 years ago. They'll immediately say, because the Snyder Cut. Because the Snyder Cut proves that if we bash these things enough, they'll listen to us. They'll stop making the woke crap, etc. And it's hard, because then it means that we have to, that I get why the people are saying, no, this movie was great. It was 10 out of 10, because that's the battlefield that for some stupid reason Hollywood has decided we're fighting in.
Well, and it's funny that you said The Last Jedi, because I agree with you, but I would say it's two things that really fostered this. One, it's the Snyder Cut, and two, and I apologize for the angry emails you're going to get, it's the downplaying of Finn and the elevating of Kylo Ren in that Star Wars trilogy because of a racist backlash against having Finn be a major character, and instead elevating a genocidal neo-Nazi to romantic hero.
Yep. No, totally agree with that. And Rose Tran, who was a very popular part of the second movie, being totally abandoned for the third. And one other thing I'll just say on that, and then I promise we'll get to the movie itself, but to me, this was one of the most outrageous things that I've seen. Actually, give me, I'm sorry, 1 second, because I want to make sure I can find this exact quote. I won't make us go too much longer, but I posted something specifically about this on Facebook. Let me get the exact quote. And it, totally agreed. And for me, I think one of the things that makes me most realize how much, like, I think one of the best reviews of this movie that I've seen, and I think this is kind of where you and I are both coming from, we'll get into that in a second, but is that both this portrayal of the character by Millie Alcock and the character herself deserved much better than she was given by the producers of this movie and the kind of studio's attention to this movie. And to me, the thing that kind of most like underlines that is, we're just talking about, like, for 10 years, we've been seeing these horrible attacks on people of color, on women, on anyone who dares be at all woke, in any of these spaces, or be connected to movies that they're calling woke just because it's not straight white men, straight white cis men specifically. And the headline was that Warner Brothers admits that they were surprised at the trolling and abuse of Millie Alcock because they believed the culture had evolved past that sort of stuff. And I just...
On what evidence?
Yeah. Like, Star Wars,
in
at least...
Trump's America?
Star Wars and Star Trek have both much too late, but have started getting to the point where they have things ready to roll out, to smack down those fans and to say, you're not representing us. And they have, Ewan McGregor did a big publicity campaign when this happened during the release of the Kenobi show, saying, like, all you people attacking the black actress who's playing the sister, whose name I forget, the one of the Inquisitors, he was just like, no, you guys are, you missed the point entirely. And there was a lot done to protect the actors from that, to like help give them coaches to help work through their social media getting attacked. And so them just saying that, not having any preparation for this, as though this wasn't going to happen, as though we haven't seen it coming for 6 months, since she was chosen. So anyway, saying all that about the context of the movie, Jessica, what'd you think of the movie?
I thought it was pretty good. I give it a B. I had a
Fair
good
enough.
time.
Yeah. I think.
What do you think?
So I think that I think I agree with you about exactly what kind of movie this was. I probably am just less fond of this kind of a movie at this point, because I think you and I, if I'm right, I feel like I would say this is exactly at the level of a mediocre MCU movie. Perfectly fine. I'm not super excited to rewatch it, but good. A lot of things about the plot don't make too much sense. Fair enough. I think for me, the combination of I did have a lot of hopes and expectations because I did really like the character and I loved the portrayal of her just for those few minutes in Superman. And where I think one of the ways the movie most failed is on the ethical decision making of the characters and the ethical points it was trying to make, which is obviously
Is that
the thing
something
that
you think about? Is
no,
that a thing that you
it's kind of
ethics
like like
vis-a-vis superheroes?
if there's a movie that I really like, even though the costumes are terrible, and I'm talking to my friend who's a costume designer, she's probably going to be like, yeah, I agree with you about the overall quality of the movie, but I couldn't like it as much as you did because the costumes were garbage.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
kind of
and
how I felt about it.
I think I'm coming from the opposite direction that you are, where you had high expectations. I had very low expectations because this movie is based very directly on a comic book that I really can't hang with. That was not for me. And I was quite relieved at the changes that were made in the tone and substance in that transition from comic to movie. And it put a better taste in my mouth than it would have if I was just coming in cold.
I can totally see that. And I think, yeah, because for me especially, like I got the little bit of the party girl aspect, but I definitely did. I was going in with that Melissa Benoist idea of Supergirl as the hope and the shiny, all that. And the more I think about it, the more I think part of why that worked so well in the DC Arrowverse is because there wasn't Superman. Because having both, like Superman kind of appears from time to time in that universe, but didn't have his own show until Superman and Lois, which is I think far and away the best of the CW shows. But like I do think that having two like beacons of hope like that at the same time can be harder to swallow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the actual story then, because I walked away describing this as Jessica Jones in True Grit. How does that? Do you think that's kind of accurate? And how much is that? Like, would that description be more applicable or less applicable to the comic book than to the movie?
It's completely applicable to the movie. I would take the Jessica Jones part out of the comic to a certain extent.
Right.
I don't think anybody would go straight to Jessica Jones reading the comic because Jessica Jones has a lot of humor to her. There's a lot of sarcasm. She's pretty self-aware of what a wreck she is. And that's part of what makes her so likable. And the comic is straight up True Grit in space, no doubt about it. Like 100%, everybody immediately pegs it as such. And it's not a secret like that.
Yeah. And it's a great story. I've got no problem ripping off that story.
I guess. I feel some way about the degree of comfort that we seem to have with ripping off things that are not in the public domain across the board, but that's a larger conversation that is going to get me in a lot of trouble. So let's strike that from the record. But the comic, the tone of it is very bleak. There is like this is a comedy in a lot of ways. There's a lot of humor to it. It's funny. Supergirl as a character is funny. There's tons of jokes. There's characters who are purely there for comic relief. None of that is in the comic. The comic is absolutely like bleak and nihilistic, and like the destruction of Argo City is much more brutal and really like kind of pushes your face into the death and suffering of the Kryptonian people. Like it's really, and that even though Jessica Jones is a character who's very obviously very marked by trauma, she has that.
Yeah, she has humor. Like that's what I think. I described this as Kara Jones because to me, her performance felt very much like the DC version of Jessica Jones, in that she seems to everyone like a funny drunk or a funny mean drunk, and really it's because she's carrying around so much trauma and guilt and sadness and all that. And I will start by saying that was definitely to me a bit of a fake out from the end of the Superman movie, but one I really appreciated because, again, for me as someone who doesn't know the comic, doesn't know all that, I did take her as a party girl at the end of the first Superman movie, and I thought that would have been a fun story as well. and then to quickly show me, oh, no, 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 guess what? We're challenging your assumptions. You see a girl who likes to go get drunk and you think, yeah, she's a party girl. She wants to hook up with people in bars. She wants to dance on the roof. Actually, no, this is a trauma drunk who will have fun sometimes, but is not what you're thinking of. Is much more Jessica Jones than Paris Hilton. That's actually a really fun way to challenge the assumptions.
Absolutely agreed. I will argue with one point of that. Her hooking up with people in bars, she never does that. And that actually, I think, is really important, because one of the other things that
and to be clear, I was saying that's what I thought was being...
That was the assumption. Got it.
The end of Superman made me think Paris Hilton, not Jessica Jones, is what I was saying.
Very fair, very fair. One of the things, a couple of things to me that I really appreciated about the character's portrayal here, and in general, the portrayal of female characters, there were some gender issues, which we'll talk about, but they weren't Kara related. And one of those was, again, like Jessica Jones, this girl is filthy. She looks like she smells bad. She has not washed her hair, maybe since Argo blew up. I guess it didn't blow up. It just turned to cancer. She just looks like dirty and stinky. And she looks, I know she's wearing makeup. She's starring in a movie, but she does not look like she's wearing makeup. It's not no makeup. It looks like she's not wearing makeup, which is a little different than Jessica Jones, who looks like she put makeup on 4 days ago and has been sleeping in it ever since. But it's that same, she looks like a believable person who is a real wreck. And even at the end, when she puts on the Supergirl costume and she's all heroic, her hair is still dirty. And I loved that. I loved it because at no point did I feel like this character was being constructed for the male gaze. And before, you were saying, she looks great when she's kicking ass, and she does, because Millie Alcock is a beautiful person and she is badass and she looks awesome. But at no point is the camera like, ooh, let's get a little cheeky shot up her skirt. Let's linger on her boobs. There's none of that. Physically, she's presented the same way David Corenswet would be, or even a little less, because David Corenswet, they spent a lot of time in that movie being like, do you remember he's beautiful? Do you want to look at him again? He's so beautiful. And they don't do that with Millie. And then the other thing is that they don't do that with any female character, which given that one subplot, I really appreciated that. For example, 13-year-old Ruthie is never sexualized, which is a low bar, but I'm so glad they cleared it.
No, especially, and we'll talk in a minute about the sexual trafficking is added into this movie, and I think that I have a lot of issues with how that's done. But at least it reminded me a lot, actually, of the conversation we had in our Birds of Prey episode, where you pointed out something that I was kind of aware of, but I really needed you to kind of draw home of how much, that when either of the two, that the bad guy in that both treats Harley Quinn terrible and also literally strips naked a woman at the bar. And in both cases, the camera pans away and the camera focuses on the internal feelings of the woman about the abuse she's dealing with, not, oh, isn't it terrible that he ripped off her shirt? But look, let's be titillated by the view of her chest, and, you compare this to, and I like a lot of what Joss Whedon did with a lot of the characters, but I can recite from memory every aspect of what Black Widow's costume looks like on her ass, because he showed me that shot every single time she walked in and out of a room. I don't have that with this movie, and I'm pretty happy I don't, it wouldn't fit the character in any shape or form.
Absolutely. Women are being abused and sexually exploited in this movie. We know that because the movie tells us, but not because it makes the camera or the audience complicit in that abuse. And that is so important.
Right. Exactly. Let's though talk about that plot line, because I'm like, again, low-hanging fruit. You didn't try to make it titillating that women were being shown, that women were going through this horrible sex trafficking thing. I wasn't thrilled though that they put it in the movie, and from we've talked about my senses. You're kind of feeling the same way. How did you feel about it being included?
I mean, first of all, I will say, we mentioned that the plot is True Grit. I would say this movie is like 40% True Grit, 30% Star Wars, but just the cantina scene, like
Yeah.
over and over. There's like 5 cantina scenes, which is okay. I like the cantina scene. It's fine. And how many percents am I left? 30. 30% ripping off Mad Max Fury Road, but not really
Yeah.
getting why that movie's so good,
Yeah.
and just using the word brides and being like, and put it like dressing them in off-white and being like, nailed it. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, no, you didn't. I mean, one of my objections to it is it does a little bit feel like this is a girl movie, so we need to put a girl problem in the girl movie so Kara can do a feminism about it, which is
Yeah.
not a good feeling.
Yeah.
That's gross. And I don't know that that's what the decision making was, but
Yeah.
that's the way it comes off.
I remember once going to a panel. This was at WisCon, so you might remember this as well. But I went to a panel on Black Panther, where someone was talking about why it was so important this was a black made movie, and she said that one way is that no one ever calls Black Panther the N word. That if it was a white made movie, there'd be some scene where someone is racist to him in a way, and I feel like that to me that was what was in my mind as I was thinking about this plot, because exactly what you just said, Kara has to do a feminism about it.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that is somewhat the case, that a lot of it was, I'm saying this based on a podcast I was listening to by people who are like very much in the industry. And I don't remember honestly if they said this was from what they were like in interviews with the writer and director or just their assumptions of it. So take this with a grain of salt. But that it was, as you said, they were seriously toning down the darkness and the grittiness and the terribleness of the, not the bandits. What are they called?
Brigands.
The Brigands, thank you, which is way too cool a name to have used on this group. But so therefore they still needed to have something that made it terrible enough that we would be okay with that the issue wasn't, does this guy deserve to die? The issue was, should a young girl kill him? And to me it's the most low-hanging fruit. And it's the idea of like, killing her family would have been enough. He doesn't have to be this epic swords maker. Killing her family and killing other people, like, again, we'll get to the ethics of the revenge and the killing, but it felt very much like male producers looking at a woman movie and saying, okay, well, if we're not going to be as dark as the comic, we need to make him super anti-feminist. How do we do that? We introduce sexual assault in some way.
Yeah, because this is definitely a new element for the movie. And right. One thing I will point out, so the comic was written by Tom King, and he was one of the writers on the movie. Like, I don't know if he produced a screenplay or if he was just like in the development process. But it does a lot of elements.
And he's the writer of the graphic novel, right?
He's the writer of the original comic, right. Yes. And the art in the comic is by Bilquis Evely, and she's wonderful. Like, my issues with the comic have nothing to do with her art. She's stupendous. And one of the planets in the movie, the one where all the sex trafficking happens, is actually named after her. It's called Bilquis, which I thought was very sweet.
That's really cool.
Subtext of what's happening on that planet aside, but also there's a lounge singer, so that's nice. Yeah. I will say, I know we're going to talk about the needle drop, but the girl from Ipanema needle drop was actually great, and
that was fantastic. I want to know more about, are humans a part of this world and how that song got there? But in the moment, I didn't care. Like,
I mean, it's the DC universe. You got Green Lanterns, you got Space Cabbie. He drives a cab in space. Like, there's ways. But back to the serious stuff. So there are a lot of elements in this movie that feel like they were sort of dropped in and they don't gel. And this is one of them, because aside from the general, like, I feel like you put this in here because it's a movie about a girl, and I don't like that you did that. I have two main issues with it. One is that, and they're related. One is that it's not a consistent through line. Yeah. When the brides are not on the screen, the movie doesn't care about them or remember that they exist. Yeah. They just get discarded.
And specifically, it is never something that Kara mentions. Like, Supergirl never brings it up as I started for my dog, but now I need to save those women.
Well, and that's the other half of it, which is I was talking to my friend Rebecca Goldberg, who I do the Superman podcast with, and she phrased it perfectly, where she said the movie's priorities are number one, a dog, number two, the murder of Ruthie's entire family, number three, active, widespread sex trafficking. And
Right.
like the thing about like storytelling is stakes should be personal to your hero. Like, I don't have a problem with Crypto being Kara's main motivation. There's no issue with that. But the fact that she never seems to incorporate the sex trafficking into a thing that she cares about, like she's going to save lives if they're right in front of her, but it never becomes either part of her motivation for stopping these guys or part of her motivation for killing Krem at the end.
Right.
I just don't think, again, I'm glad that the sexual violence was not depicted on the screen. I'm glad that none of the women in this movie were sexualized. I'm glad that when Krem is in that cell with Ruthie threatening her, he never does so in a sexual way, because believe me, I was bracing myself for it.
Me too.
But I don't think that the people who made this movie were capable of the gravitas that this subject deserved. And so I don't think it should have been in there. And quite frankly, because they didn't treat it with that gravitas or connect it through, you could have replaced it with anything. Like they're stealing a shipment of toasters and we need these space toasters. It could have been anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and to me that felt like it cheapened the issue itself. Like, to me, I'm not going to look at this movie and go, thank God someone's talking about the real world issue of trafficking. But also, to narrow it down just the storytelling part, what you're trying to do there, it seems, is to say Kara's a person who starts out caring about her own stuff. She's being threatened, her dog's being threatened, her situation is threatened. She will fight, but she's not going to fight on behalf of others. And then step two is she'll fight on behalf of this one girl who she has a personal connection to and sees as the younger version of herself that didn't get to be. And then step three is she'll fight on behalf of the stranger. And that's where you become the superhero, is when you say, those women are locked up, that's not okay, I'm going to fight on behalf of them. And the fact that we never get that makes her deciding to go back to Metropolis and put on the suit feel like it felt to me like this was kind of a movie written by committee, or at least where it was like they sort of said, we're going to insert A, which means we have to have B. And then we're going to insert F, which means we have to have G. And then later they forgot that they needed B because of A. And so they cut out B and they cut out G. And then A and F are sitting there going like, what the hell are you doing in this movie?
Right. They're plugging things in and taking things out, but they're never watching it through to go, is this coherent? And like the arc that you were describing is a perfectly cromulent arc, but it also, like, that's not even where she begins the movie, because she steps up to protect Ruthie the second she recognizes she's in danger. She has no hesitation or regret about it. She's drunk, but she's not resistant to it, because, and this is a thing that I liked about the character, that it is very ingrained in her to protect others, to step to bullies, and to be kind and to be good. But it did mean that that particular arc that you're describing could not occur.
Right.
And I don't even necessarily mind that she doesn't really have an arc and she doesn't really grow as a character, because she's a comic book character and they are pretty static. And like, I think Hollywood has had trouble adapting those kinds of characters to movies where they do feel like you need that. And then we wind up with things like Iron Man 2, where we're like doing a weird nerfing of our characters' emotional growth so we can do it again.
We'll talk about nerfing characters in terms of this movie in just a minute, but yes, go on.
But yeah, like there was, I don't mind that she didn't have an arc, but I do mind that the movie so often felt, like you said, written by committee and very choppy, because they could not maintain consistency about the subplots.
Yeah. And I think I agree with that. And like, yeah, I am okay with more comic book movies not having an arc. I think most comic book movies think that they need to have, you know, the trilogy, which is origin story, questioning the mission, and then ending the mission. And part of why I love Batman Returns is it, to me, and this is like the second of Tim Burton movies going way back into our childhood, before a lot of our listeners were born. Check it out. It's a great movie. Get in the Duck is one of the best lines in cinema history. But also,
Mistletoe can be deadly if you eat it.
Batman is completely static in that movie. He is not the main character. He is just sort of the POV character. Like everything happens around him. But anyway, putting that digression aside, I think for me, it's that you're right. There isn't an arc, but there is a face turn. There is a moment in this movie where she says, okay, I'm going to go back to Metropolis. And I think because those threads were never connected, I never really get why. And I want to ask actually about the comic book, because what I heard on a podcast, you can tell me if you agree with this or not, is that in the comic book, it actually becomes clear by the end that she's telling Ruthie her main motivation is to save her dog, but actually Krypto's super dog. He's going to be fine. And that the issue was never really that she needed to get the antidote. It was that she wanted to protect Ruthie. In the movie, that doesn't come through at all. It really comes like, she really does need to save Krypto. Is that something that you understood from the comic book, or is that someone going on a flight of fancy?
I mean, it's certainly not in the movie because we have all those flashbacks of her thinking about Krypto. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's pretty explicit that that's remains her motivation throughout. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't remember the comic well enough to say. I read it in single issues as it was coming out, which was in like 2022, 2023. I don't even remember. So
yeah.
I have seen other people talking about that, so I'm inclined to say, yeah, sure. But I don't remember.
I guess it just speaks to this movie being kind of ethically incoherent, because
yes,
to me, if they put that in, that sort of shows what you're talking about, that she remembers her parents' teaching, even when she's drunk, even when she's self-indulgent, she's going to step up and help others. And whereas what I got from this movie was she's forgotten what her parents told her because of the trauma, and because she's kind of rejected that because of the trauma, but that this helps her to remember it. And it mostly felt like such a wasted story beat, because, in the first Superman movie, in the David Corenswet Superman movie, we have this incredible plot of him realizing, like, no, Jor-El wanted you to go be a conqueror. Your mother wanted you to have a harem and like spread your seed quite literally throughout the human females. And you rejected that. And now Kara comes from people who had a much better approach to this. That seems to set up a great dynamic between the two. But they seemed a lot more interested in showing Argo City falling apart instead of actually giving us any of that.
Which, side note, it's extremely funny that Kara's parents are like good, normal people. And like at one point, Zor-El's like, so I know my brother had like a weird theory about his baby, but let's not talk about that. Like, what was going on? I think it's very funny to me if Krypton's culture was very normal and it was just specifically Jor-El and Lara were uncomfortable.
Well, I think it feels to me like they originally had like 8 story ideas, and instead of picking 2 and following through, they picked 6 and just didn't do anything with them.
Yeah, and like before you said that it could have been like, it seemed like they wanted it to be Kara's guided by remembering what her parents said, but you got that she forgot what her parents said. And I think both of those things are in the movie, and they're not like just randomly, like it's not consistent as so many things.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, and it is tied together by this really very coherent performance by Millie Alcock, thankfully. I will also say, this doesn't really have to do with the ethics of the movie, but since we're talking about it, I did actually think that the destruction of Argo sequence was really well done and quite moving. And I am someone who is on the record many, many times as not caring about Krypton. Let's move on. I don't care. It's gone. Let's talk about Metropolis. But it's so much more significant to Kara's story than it is to Clark's. And I thought that this movie did a really good job highlighting how different her tragedy is than his. And his is still a tragedy, even leaving aside the part where his parents were evil.
No,
like,
I get it.
Never knowing your birth culture is a tragedy. Never knowing your birth family is a tragedy. I don't mean to downplay that. They're just, they have different stories. And I appreciated this movie taking the time to highlight that.
this is a clearly much, much lower level of trauma, but it's what I connect to. My parents got divorced when I was 14, and I was keenly aware of the dynamics between them, and it was very painful to watch it happen in real time. But I also have 10, 12 years of happy memories of us as a family. One of my best friends, their parents divorced when he was like 9 months old. And so, okay, yeah. And so we've
I
had
was
that.
like one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had that conversation of like not comparing traumas, but realizing like we are both children of divorce, and that is can be traumatic. I mean, to be clear, staying in bad marriages can be much more traumatic for kids. I'm not saying it's
Yes.
not, but that like we realized we had very different experiences because for him, part of the trauma was that he had no memory of his family together. You know,
Yes. Yes.
so I get that. I think there it may also just be that I had kind of imprinted on the DC's take on it of that not none of the Argo City stuff is in the Arrowverse, but instead this idea that she was actually supposed to go there and take care of him, and because her ship gets damaged and all this, that it gets reversed. And so I was kind of like, wait, but where's that part of it?
Yeah, so the version that's in this movie is the
Uh-huh.
older version. It's the original version of her origin, which is,
Mm.
and they played it perfectly straight, which is hilarious, which is that when Krypton blew up, there was just a chunk with a whole city
Yeah.
on it, and it was in a bubble, and it was fine until it became kryptonite and everybody died. But for like 30 years, it was fine, no worries. Which is very funny and very silly. And it's
Yeah.
in so that's the original Silver Age origin. And then when they brought
Okay.
Kara back in the mid 2000s, they introduced the much more logical version where she is the older cousin. It just took her longer to get to Krypton, and
Right.
she was in suspended animation
Yeah.
while Clark grew up, and that's why the ages got reversed.
Right.
So in the Woman of Tomorrow comic, which is what this movie is based on, Tom King, he's really only, in terms of Supergirl material, he's exclusively drawing from her very first appearance. He does not factor in any other comic with
Mm.
her. And so that's the origin he uses. And it's lifted very directly into this
Right.
movie, except it's bleaker in the comic. Like at one point, she's walking through the destroyed Argo City and she just finds a dead baby.
Oh.
So when I say this comic is bleak,
I mean, yeah, and I think I do agree it was very beautifully done. I think again because I hadn't seen it in other settings, and I'm just such a like I'm always interested in the practical. And so I
yeah.
was looking at it and going, 30 years? There's no farmland.
Oh, it
What are
makes
you
no
eating?
sense.
Yeah. But
Well, and I'm glad we're talking about it, because when I came out of it, I was like, this is going to confuse people, because there was a TV show for like 8 years with the modern origin. And if you pick up a comic book now, it's going to have the modern origin. But okay.
fair enough. Fair enough. So let's talk about what I thought was after Alcock, the second best performance in this movie, and completely out of place in this movie, which is that I am really excited to see Deadpool as a biker. And by which, of course, I'm talking about Lobo, played by Jason Momoa. He's hilarious. He's charming. He's a bad boy, but in a sexy way. It feels almost kind of like crossing Daredevil with the demigod character from Moana that The Rock plays. Maui,
Yeah.
thank you. In terms of like the ego and all that. And he's introduced as comic relief in what's supposed to be the emotional center of the movie, when we're we're learning about the sex trafficking, when Ruthie is really facing this, does she want revenge, when Supergirl is facing the should she have stopped Ruthie for revenge. It felt so out of place and kind of draining the essence of that. That's to me. What did you think of Lobo in this movie?
Yeah, I have no idea why he was there. From what I've heard, Tom King did want to use him in the comic, and DC said no for whatever reason, which I always think is really funny, because it's like he's not in a regular book, so like, was he busy? Like, why can't you use him? But they said no. And it seems like to me, it feels like Tom King was like, well, then I'm going to put him in my story treatment for the movie. And James Gunn was like, hell yeah, I'm a nerd. I love Lobo. We should get Jason Momoa to play him. And Jason Momoa like came in on a skateboard with an electric guitar and was like, yeah, brah. Yeah. And at no point did any of them go, what should he do in the movie? Because you're right.
Do it.
He has no purpose. If you literally, like with the sex trafficking plotline, you could change that to something else.
Right.
but you could not take it out. You could literally cut every shot of Lobo in this movie and the story would not change. He has no effect on the plot in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And it felt like he was there for cameo. It felt like he was there for the same reason Superman was there, right? So we
Yeah.
could be like, hey, it's that guy. But most people don't know who Lobo is. So it's like he's there to say his catchphrases, but people don't know what those are. And he only said one of the three anyway. So like,
Which was his catchphrase?
oh, it's not even a full phrase, but he has three like terms that he uses, calling people bastitches, which he did say.
Okay.
Saying frag instead of fuck, which
Yep.
yeah, I mean, that's also a video game thing. He did
Yep.
not say that. And it's like Fetal's Giz or something is another one of his curses, which he did not say.
Okay.
Which like, it just felt like he was there, like Kramer in an episode of Seinfeld. Like he walks in and the studio audience applauds, except
well,
who is he?
I hope it was just even for those dumb reasons, because I have unfortunately a much more unfortunate understanding, which is, again, I've dived too deep, like the dwarves in the mountain, into the hate of this. And one thing I kept seeing was guys saying, oh my God, this movie was so terrible. I only went because Lobo was in it and it was just awful.
No.
I do think that part of it was how do we get guys to go see a Supergirl movie? Let's put Jason Momoa in it. Let's put Lobo in it. That aspect.
I mean, maybe. I don't think Lobo's that popular. Like, here's the thing. You called him the Deadpool of this movie, and you're not wrong in the sense of gleefully amoral, murdering left and right, pretty much indestructible, very genre savvy, and basically, like, he's a parody character. They're both parody characters. But he's nowhere close to the level of popularity of Deadpool. Deadpool has like 5 comics coming out of Marvel right now. Lobo, I think he might have a comic now because there's a movie, but in general, he does not typically have a book or appear regularly. So, I mean, you could be right, but if it were me and I was like, liaison to the chuds at DC Entertainment or whatever, and they were like, how do we get men to see this movie? I wouldn't put Lobo in it. I'd put Hal Jordan in it. I'd be like, there's a cameo from one of the Green Lanterns to lead into the show.
See, that's the thing. I'm thinking that a lot of the audience that they're talking about, they're not really comic book fans. They're just people who want to yell about these things. Because I imagine that Jason Momoa is the draw, not the specific character.
Okay, fair,
kind of
fair.
But again, I also might be too conspiracy minded, and it might just be these chuds are saying that and to say it. But yeah, I think
I will.
Fun character. I don't think that character can carry a movie unless you can really give me some things.
No,
I like if that character appears on 2 or 3 episodes of the Lantern show. Sign me up. I am so there for that. He'd be fantastic.
I mean, I thought it was fine. Like, I actually expected a little bit more. And I'm not a Lobo gal, but I think he can be very funny. I did think what I personally thought was the funniest moment in the movie is when Kara does the Ditz voice to get information out of him. Like, it was so perfect. I was like, maybe my standards were too high. I was like, I think he could be a little funnier. I think he could be a little more badass. I think he could look a little cooler. Like, I saw somebody pointing out that his motorcycle goes on the ground, and I was like, yeah, it's a space motorcycle. Why is it on the ground?
Oh, I mean,
and like these are small quibbles, but like I'm thinking about there's that one Justice League episode, Justice League Unlimited, where they think Superman's dead, but he's actually lost in the far future with Vandal Savage. And that plot line is hilarious. But in the present day, they're like at his funeral and Lobo shows up and he's like, hey, I hear you got a spot on the League. Well, now you got the main man. And they're like, oh no. And like, that's what I wanted. I wanted that kind of that Deadpool energy. And I didn't dislike any of his scenes, and it was one of those things where like I could tell Jason Momoa was having so much fun that I was like, you keep going, honey. Yeah. You're having a great time. Like, you don't want to ruin somebody's fun. But I
That's fair. That's
I
fair.
expected it. He's so extreme. I expected it to go a little harder. But
Yeah.
yes, if he's in the Green Lantern show, that would be delightful.
I just have no experience with the character, so this was for me starting from zero. So let's get to what is, I think, really the ethical heart of this movie, or at least what it sort of claims is, but then it keeps veering off, which is revenge. And this movie has, I think, a very interesting take on it that I don't think it realizes the ethical importance of. And so I left very frustrated because, you know, I've talked about this before. It's a thing across movies of, do superheroes kill? And I've often complained that I think that often, especially characters like Daredevil, they blur the lines of, like, to me, in the midst of a fight where it is impossible to declare you're never going to use lethal force, because anything can be lethal force if just the right angle and the right part of the skull and all that kind of stuff, and you're hitting people in the skull with metal pipes. That's my catch line. But to me, that is still distinctly different from, I have defeated this enemy. They are not a danger to anyone in this moment. I have the potential to not allow them to be a potential for danger to anyone else, and I am going to murder them in this moment.
Right. It's in cold blood.
Right, exactly. And revenge is a motivation to do that, but is to me part of that question. And I feel like for most of the movie, it links those two together as one question. Because she wants to do it for revenge, but what Kara is saying is, no, that kind of killing is wrong. It's going to destroy you. And then at the end, Kara kills him after convincing Ruthie not to do it. Actually, before I go on my rant, what did you think about that?
So, if you had asked me before I saw this movie, if you had told me this movie ends with Supergirl killing a man in cold blood, I would have been very upset. Yeah. Upon seeing the movie, the execution, no pun intended, did not really bother me. Like I don't, for me, it was not a deal breaker, but yeah. I agree with you that the lead up to it was so totally incoherent that it didn't work. It didn't work for different reasons than it not working in Man of Steel. In Man of Steel, it didn't work because Superman would not make that decision, and you have not convinced me that he would. Whereas right. Here, it was just like, what are you even trying to say? Like, right. What?
Yeah, it was incoherent.
And
I think partly, like, it's almost like you, if I understand you correctly, tell me if this is an accurate paraphrase. You're saying you would not have been okay with Kara making a moral decision of that weight, and the movie said, "Nah, it's not actually a weighty decision. Don't worry about it." Like, because
I mean, but it only said that sometimes. Sometimes, yeah. Well, I mean, again, like, you're absolutely right. Sometimes the movie was like, killing is wrong, and sometimes the movie was like, revenge specifically is wrong.
Right.
And those are not, like you said, those are not the same thing. And Kara's opinions about killing changed depending on what the scene needed. Like, I was talking about this with my friend Becky Allen, who's been on the show before. We saw the movie together and we were discussing it afterwards. And they were like, yeah, Kara's motives for not letting Ruthie kill Krem is, it's not the end of the movie yet. So it's not time for him to die. And like, that's the only consistent one.
Well, and I actually did take a more consistent one out of it. But again, I feel like the movie didn't do it enough, which is that, and it's one that I really like, which is I am broken and jaded. I have lost my innocence. And so if I kill him, it won't hurt me further. I don't want you to become like me. And so I'm going to protect you and steer you away from the path that I am on. And I've seen that done very well. And I'm going to reference a show that I think is very beloved, but obviously has a lot of problems, especially as we learn more about the author. But in Buffy, in season 5, there's this plot, forgive me for spoilers for a show that's 20 years old, where there's this demigod.
I'll admit I actually have never watched season 5, but that's my fault.
Forgive me. I'm going to spoil you. I apologize.
Go for it.
Mute it.
Is Dawn a key? What?
Yeah. You're gonna the main antagonist is this, and again, I haven't seen it for many years, but I think like a demigoddess, basically, named Glory, a goddess, really, who is just immortal and unstoppable. But for whatever reason, she kind of like switches back and forth between her and this just human doctor who's just a decent idea. I think his name is Adam. I don't remember, but has no idea that like he is the living embodiment of this goddess. And they realize that if they kill this human guy who is, like I said, not bad, not evil, not in any way responsible for what's happening, it would be cold-blooded murder. It would be wrong, but it would stop him. And Buffy is aware of this, and Buffy is like, I cannot do this. And so we see Giles basically knock him out, and then the last thing we see is him like putting a gloved hand to choke this guy out or cut off his airways so he can't breathe. And he basically says like, Buffy is too good a person to do this, and I want her to stay that, but I'm not. And this is also the season where we've seen a lot of his backstory as Ripper and things like that. And to me, I think that if that's what they were really trying to go for, that sounds fantastic. But also, if what you're doing is to me, that moment then is her accepting, I can't ever be a hero. The best I can hope for is to be an anti-hero. In which case, why the hell does she go back to Metropolis at the end?
And that's what I'm saying, that it's not consistent, which real quick, first of all, RIP Anthony Head. Great guy, great actor.
And Michelle Trachtenberg, Dawn.
And Michelle I went to middle school with her. The other thing I was going to say is there's a similar moment in season 2 of The Punisher where the teen girl that he's like taken on has to like shoot somebody in self-defense, and she starts crying. She says, I killed him. And Frank goes, no, you didn't, and shoots him. Like the guy's still alive and shoots him and says, I killed him. Right.
The guy is very clearly about to die, but he's like,
right. But it's like, and it's like a perfect, like, that's how Frank takes care of people. But yeah, like that's what they were trying to do. But I have a couple of issues with that. First of all, I was really worried they were setting up for some reveal where like Kara was so upset about losing her whole civilization that she did kill someone like early, like when she came to Earth, and that's why she left the planet. And now she knows what it's like. And thank God they didn't go there. But I was like, where are they? Because every time she was like, don't get revenge, Ruthie. It'll ruin you. I know. I've been there. And it's like, your parents died of radiation poisoning. What? Like, she just doesn't make sense as she's positioned as a character who can speak to the destructive nature of enacting revenge from a personal experience. Like she just isn't. So that doesn't make any sense. And also, if all she wants is for Ruthie's personal soul not to be corroded by revenge, which is a weird thing for her to care so much about someone she doesn't know. Why didn't she let Lobo kill Krem?
Yeah.
Because that moment would have worked fine. There's a moment where Lobo's about to throw Krem off of the ship and she goes, no. And if she was just saying, I need the antidote that's around his neck, but she also forgot about the antidote whenever it was convenient, or whenever the filmmakers forgot about the antidote.
So here, I do think that moment is defensible, but again, it's also incoherent. That I don't blame anyone for missing some of these, and I certainly missed a lot too that you pointed out. I think it's that if Krem dies and Ruthie is not involved, then Ruthie doesn't actually have any resolution. She wants Ruthie to be given the opportunity to take revenge and to decide not to, which I think is different than her just never doing it because she never got the chance. But again, that's never stated. Like the TV show Gotham does exactly that with young Bruce Wayne, and it's fantastic. So does Batman Begins. But here, that's never articulated.
It's never articulated. And to be honest, sometimes when I've seen similar scenarios done, I do find it pretty manipulative on the part of the mentor character to be like, I just wanted you to know you could walk away. And it's like, no. Like this person is suffering. Why are we doing this? But also, again,
because you're now taking a moral bet that you're right. And if not, you've just facilitated murder.
Which would actually be pretty funny if they lost that bet. I would watch that story. But also, again, it downplays the seriousness of his crimes. Like, if she's like, no, don't kill him, Lobo. I need to enact a little moral fable for Ruthie. Don't worry about those girls in the ship who are going to be raped and killed. That's not important. What's important is that Ruby has agency in the decision not to kill Krem.
Right.
Is not great. Like, I agree with you that I think that's what they were trying to do, but
Yeah, I'm not saying
again,
it's good.
it's not consistent, and so it did not work for me.
Well, and I think you brought up something really important also, and it's kind of underscored by the language you're using. We keep talking about the girls, the women who are going to be the brides, the ones who've been kidnapped and are going to be, sex trafficked, because none of them are named. None of them speak a line in this movie. None of them have any. What if, like, instead of Lobo, a bunch of them start fighting back in some way, and like Kara helps them kind of rise up to fight back, and one of them actually gets to have this moment, I could have seen something where like Ruthie drops the knife and then one of them grabs it and stabs the guy, and Kara's like.
That would have been really satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
I will say the daughter of that couple did have a name, but she didn't have any lines. And 3 out of 4 Black characters in this movie were murdered. And then nobody ever talked about it again or cared. So that was a thing.
And a number of them did not fail the moral test that they were given.
Yep.
Like the parents were like, when the parents were turned out to be like baddies, or at least, turning our heroes over. At least once I understood they were doing it because their daughter was being threatened, I was like, okay, so they're not just awful people, but still they faced a moral test and they failed it. And I would fail the same test, let's be clear. But like, with so few characters of color in this movie, and that's who you go with.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate any of that. And again, for the record, all of that is movie only. You cannot blame the comic for it. But yeah, it's like, again, part of why I don't have a problem with Kara killing Krem at the end of the movie is because the movie did not, even for a single second, posit any other way for Krem's crimes, right, which is a silly phrase, to be stopped. Like, he is positioned as a character who is as strong as a Kryptonian, and he will continue to do this. And like, the movie also didn't like conclude any of that. Like, were the girls safely escorted home? Were the other brigands stopped? Did they just let Lobo kill them all to get rid of them? Like, what, we don't know. Did they call some Green Lanterns to take them away? Who knows? But if Kara had said, like, this is for my dog, and this is so you'll never hurt another girl, it would have fixed so many problems with the movie. It would have fixed her moral through line. It would not have entirely fixed, but it would have gone some way to fixing the sex trafficking plot line.
Yeah.
And it would have felt so justified. No, she says, this is for my dog.
Ruthie.
Yeah, this is for what you did to that girl's family.
Yeah, not to any of the other women.
No, they don't count. They don't have names.
They're not mentioned.
Yeah.
Frustrating. All right, quick. Let's just do 1 or 2 last quick hits, and then we'll be out. The needle drop. Because, and I will say, I saw a TikTok that said, millennial girly pop girls, they all get this. This was for them, and if you didn't love it, then clearly. So, what did you think of Tori Amos Eats World?
Hey, listen, The Middle is a great song. I love that song.
The Middle's a great song. It's by a band called Jimmy Eat World, and the singer sounded a lot like Tori Amos of the 90s in the kind of soft piano ballad, hence Tori Amos Eat World. Go ahead.
Because they had to take a song and make it a girl song for girls.
Right.
Yeah, I am a millennial. I remember when that song came out. I love that song. I know every word. It's great. I've sung it at karaoke. That needle drop was ridiculous. And part of the problem with it was, at the point that it happens in the movie, we have already had like at least 4 other fight scenes where Kara is in the middle of a circle of guys that she's fighting. Like, this is a a set piece that the director loved and did over and over and over again. And so even in the climax, like in the third act, we have like 3 of them. So when we get that scene where now it's Ruthie in the middle and there's bad guys in a circle around her, we just saw that sequence 12 seconds ago.
Yeah.
So it feels like we're getting climax after climax after climax, but this one's in slow motion and there's a silly acoustic cover of this Jimmy Eat World song that is extremely literal. Like the lyrics literally say, "Little girl, you're in the middle," and there's a little girl and she's in the middle.
I mean, for those who haven't heard the song, listen to it. There are active debates still to this day, like 20 years. I love the song, but there are debates about like, are the singers serious, or is this meant to be a parody of like the "Don't Worry, You're Going to Be Okay" song? Because the lyrics are so on the nose and so like painfully sincere.
And it felt like this was a parody. It felt like something you would do in
a Deadpool movie.
In a Deadpool movie, or to make fun of James Gunn, but it was played totally serious.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so let's just hit the last thing I wanted to talk about, which is another set piece. Why does Kara keep losing her powers?
I mean, she deliberately goes into space to
that I get,
not have her powers.
But it felt like there was just then the kryptonite sun, then the kryptonite arrows, then like it happened so many.
By the way, the green sun thing is not a thing. It's in the comic, but it's not really a thing. You are not going to find this in any other DC comic. It's very silly. Yeah, well, it felt like they didn't know what to do with a character with that level of power, so they had to keep nerfing her. And I don't even think that it had anything to do with her gender, because you see people really struggle with how to tell Superman stories too.
Right.
But again, it was something that really wasn't consistent, because like when she first meets Ruthie, she beats the crap out of some guy who's like 3 times her size, even though she is powerless and very drunk. Right. And then sometimes poison works on her when there's a yellow sun, but sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. And also, I don't know how a planet would revolve around 2 different stars, but we don't have to worry about that. That's very comic booky, and I'm not going to argue with it.
Yeah, I mean, and also like, if you know that you've taken someone to a planet with a green sun, you probably know it also has a yellow sun. So maybe is it possibly a motivation for you to watch her crawl off into a cave? Maybe you want to find her and make sure she dies in the 12 hours you have before the yellow sun comes up.
Well, it's like, hey, Ruthie, where is she? And Ruthie was like, I'm not telling. And he was like, okay, bye.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Close with a positive. How are you feeling about seeing this version of Supergirl played by Millie in other projects going forward?
I would see her 1,000 times. I think she's fantastic. I loved her performance. I would happily see her in the role as many times as they want to put her in projects. And I hope they continue to, because I really enjoyed her.
Me too. And I do think that the way she is now, like, I liked Jessica Jones in the Jessica Jones show. I think she worked best when she was I mean, in many ways, Luke Cage is almost in the Netflix Daredevil. Like, Daredevil isn't Superman. Luke Cage is. Luke Cage is the closest to like the moral paragon, I think. Yeah. And so him and Jessica Jones play off each other so well. And while I didn't like the Defenders, the scenes of her playing off Iron Fist and her playing, I mean, they were wonderful. Yeah. And I think this, like, the amount that I would pay to watch Nathan Fillion's version of the Green Lantern eating popcorn and just going back and forth like he's at a tennis match as Supergirl and Superman are arguing about what to do with someone. That's gold.
Or just like a buddy road trip movie that's just Kara and Guy going through space. Like 20 more cantina scenes. Keep doing it. I love it. I'd watch that so hard.
I think one of my hopes is that, one thing we talked about the MCU a lot is that there was a real sense of like, the MCU is the movies are the major leagues and the TV is the minors. And maybe sometimes you go from the minors to the majors, but you never go back down. Unless you're like a tertiary character, like, Lady Sif, goes into an episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. I
Yeah.
get the sense with James Gunn that he has none of that, and also that today TV is seen as prestigious enough that actors are willing to do that. I
Yeah.
would love to see Kara on an episode of Lanterns.
Oh,
I would
yeah.
love to see her just start popping up a lot.
Well, I did hear Nathan Fillion is confirmed to appear, so
Mm-hmm.
that it makes more sense for him to do it. He's a Green
Right,
Lantern, but that is, as you said, big screen going to small screen. Not that
right.
Nathan Fillion is not very at home on the small screen, but going big screen to small screen. So yeah, I would love to see her on there.
Yeah,
I think she'd play off those characters in really fun ways.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, especially because she is a cosmic character, in a way that the
Yeah.
Lanterns are. And I'll say that's the other thing that did just totally. And I'm curious again, listeners, write in again because I didn't know those comics. I thought this movie was set on Earth. I kept waiting for us to get to Earth, and so I was very confused by that. But it was fun.
Yeah, there's
actually,
even we know the is it Abin Sur? Yeah, Hal's predecessor as a Green Lantern failed to save Krypton from destruction. No, it's not. It's Tomar Ray. If you remember the 2011 Green Lantern movie, the guy who looked kind of like a chicken fish, he's the Green Lantern of Krypton, and he did a bad job.
That's very true. That's very true. All right. Well, if you've listened to episodes I have with Jessica before, you know that take a shot every time I say, Jessica, this is my last question, will be a very bad drinking game. Your liver would be in great detail, but I really hope this is going to be the last question. You mentioned really loving the artist who did Woman of Tomorrow. Did she have what I believe artists call, what's that thing that some artists use that they didn't have in this movie? Oh, color. Because everything in this movie was so bleak. It really felt like a Snyderverse movie.
Yes, I don't know if she did the colors, but I can tell you.
But my point was just that comic book was more colorful than this movie.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful comic to look at. I think she did do the colors. It's very much a like auteur kind of visual. And this was, it was pretty muddy. It could have been, again, all those cantina scenes could have been so fun with more color. And again, comparing it to 2025 Superman, which was so bright and so vibrant and really felt like you were living in a DC comic book. Obviously, there are many kinds of DC comic books, but like a classic DC comic book, I would have loved to see more saturation and more playing with, like, you're in space, you could do whatever. Like, it doesn't all have to be brown.
Yeah. And I get that it is a lot more expensive to do that because you can get away with a lot of kind of fuzzy CGI and stuff like that when it is darker. But if you like, to me, that to me is like if I have any walk away from this, it's that thing I said at the beginning of the Supergirl, the character and the actress deserved a better movie. And part of that would be a better budget. Like they deserve to have the real Superman treatment and not this Guardians of the Galaxy 2 kind of, not that particular movie is dark, but just that, that it felt just like this felt like the 10th movie of the DCU, not the second one.
Yeah. Or it felt like it was hearkening back just a little, not a lot, but it did feel like it was hearkening back a little to the Snyderverse, which is not a place I want to hearken. I will correct myself. The pencils and inks of the comic were done by Bill Key Evely, but the colors were Matt Lopez.
Got it. Okay. Good to know. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. As I said before, we can always find you on Book Riot, where you do great stuff. Your articles. I know you've done some great stuff about Supergirl and her costumes through the years, as well as Squirrel Girl and some others. But you have been published. You have a short story in Sword Stone Table. I'm going to get it right one day, but it'll be in the show notes. Sword Stone Table. But you are also you've signed a couple contracts for some new full-length novels. Tell us about it.
Yes, I have. My debut novel, Mage Struck, will be out with Harlequin next fall 2027. And then I have another book, The Conman's Guide to Dragon Slaying, out with Grand Central Press in spring of 2028. So both very far out. But if you want to find out more about them, you can visit my website, jessicaplummerwrites.com, or sign up for my newsletter for more news. They're both like fantasy rom-coms, and I think they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really look forward to having. I look forward to reading them and to having them on, and definitely giving links to buy them when they come out. So, Jessica, thank you so much as always. To our listeners, thank you so much for listening. May the force be with you.